Across the Aisle segment tonight, Republicans in Congress just introduced a new tax plan that would drastically cut taxes. Who doesn't want that? Well, liberals, I think. Here's a prediction. Over the next few weeks, you'll hear liberals say the rich need to pay their fair share of taxes. And my response to that is to ask this question of liberals. What specifically counts as rich, and what constitutes a fair share? With me now, professor at Johns Hopkins University and Democratic political commentator, Dr. Wendy Osefo. Dr. Osefo, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, I want to get your input. I want to get your analysis on this tax plan, because it seems to me that it's a bipartisan idea that more people enjoy, and it's beneficial for their lives to keep more of money in their pocket, to keep more of their paycheck than to give it to government. What's your take?
I absolutely agree, but what's being said here that's not true is, Trump purported this as a once-in-a-lifetime tax cut, but that's not the case. And this is not tax reform, it's actually tax cuts. This is nothing similar to what we saw in 1986. Instead, this is like what we saw in 1981 with Ronald Reagan and in 2001 with George Bush. And the only difference is, during that time, we were in a recession. So what Trump is doing here really raises eyebrows, because our economy is actually on the up and up, right? So it brings the question of, why is this happening, and why are we trying to push forth cuts for the higher percentage earning income individuals in our country? And I think that's where the question lies.
Right, although I'm not sure that's accurate. I mean, it seems like it's a tax cut for everybody. It's not just a tax cut for the rich here. I mean, if you look at the three brackets, the lowest bracket's 12%, then we have 25% and 35%. 35% is down from 39.5%. It's not actually as low as Ronald Reagan's tax cuts. Those were 28%. But the 12%,
right,
even though that raises the current lowest bracket by 2%, it's at 10% right now, that would be offset by the standard deduction. So the result of that would be an increase in the number of people who are actually paying no income tax whatsoever.
Actually, the truth of the matter is those offsets will be able to flourish if we raise interest rates. So let's make sure that that narrative is clear. And once we raise interest rates, that's actually going to affect all of us. And then on top of that, you made mention of the three brackets. Well, the bottom 35% of our country will not be affected by this. And middle income earners, middle class Americans, will barely or moderately be affected by this. And when we look at that bottom 35%, you will only seek a benefit if you are paying federal income taxes. So there's a lot of loopholes here. And we all know that when it comes to taxes, when it comes to finances, we will see these loopholes. But we just want to make sure that before Congress does pass this, they have conversations in a bipartisan manner to ensure that all Americans are going to see the benefit, not just those individuals who are in the higher income brackets.
No, listen, that's actually why I like this tax framework that President Trump released. One of the reasons. I, of course, support tax cuts, as the majority of Americans do, but it's something that the American people can actually, most of us agree on this. Most of us want tax cuts for everybody. Most of us recognize that it's not so much that we want to stick it to the rich. We just want the brackets to be fair here. We want everyone to have tax cuts. I guess I don't quite understand where you're coming from when you say that the bottom 35% won't be affected, because when we double that standard deduction to $24,000 for married couples who file jointly, or $12,000 for single filers, that increases the number of people that don't pay anything at all by a large number. Those people are in the bottom 35%.
Not all of them, Liz, and that's that narrative that we're talking about, and it's a pervasive narrative. That does not include everyone. And by all means, as you rightfully said, we all want this to be not necessarily tax cuts, but tax reform, right? We want to overhaul, because, of course, all Americans want to pay less money and keep more money in their pocket. But again, when it benefits one group at an advantage and is at a disadvantage for other groups, that's where the conversation lies. And something that we need to talk about here is that the Republicans desperately need this legislative win, because right now, whether we're looking at the Medical Care Act or things that have gone forth, they have not really been able to pass anything. So it behooves them to make sure that they really talk to the people on the other side of the aisle to make sure that everyone is on board with this. And when we're looking at increasing interest rates, for us to be able to pass this, which will again not benefit all Americans, that's where we have a different conversation starter. So it's not really about benefiting benefiting one group or another, is making sure that this is done, one, in a bipartisan manner, and two, is done in a way that all individuals, whether you're in bracket 1, 2, or 3, you are able to benefit.
Right. Listen, I agree with you. The Republicans do need a win. No argument there. They botched it up big time on Obamacare repeal. They definitely need a win, hopefully by the end of the year. But when you're talking about, when you use that phrase that this tax bracket or this tax reform would benefit one group of people, one demographic of people greater than another, I'm not sure that's accurate, because when liberals use that talking point, the quote unquote wealthy must pay their fair share, they neglect a lot of times to tell us exactly what that fair share is, what the definition of a fair share is, and then what the definition of a wealthy person is. I mean, maybe you can clear that up. What are they talking about when they say the wealthy needs to pay their fair share? Do you have a number that constitutes a fair share in your mind?
Well, it would not be fair for me to go into the minds of everyone and give a definition for what liberals or what Democrats think a fair share is. I am not the representative of all liberals or all Democrats. But what I do know is if you have multimillionaires like Mr. Trump himself who are reaping more benefits from these cuts than individuals who are in middle America or flyover states like Wisconsin, then that's problematic. So again, I'm not here to define what a fair share is or what wealthy is, because
wait a second. Let me interrupt for just a second, because you're defining what's not a fair share. You're saying this isn't enough for wealthy people to pay. You're saying this isn't enough for someone like President Trump to pay.
No,
so if you know what's not fair, do you have any idea what you would consider fair? I mean, how much money do you think Trump should pay in taxes in order to pay his fair share?
Absolutely. I didn't say that. What I did say was that, these cuts are not really helping the people 35% at the bottom. What I am saying is that if we do have cuts, and if the cuts benefit those of us who have more money in our pocket, then we're not talking anymore about equality. We're talking about equity. And I don't think that that is even a partisan conversation. That is a human conversation. If you have more to give and others have less to give, but the benefits are bestowed on you, that allows you to keep more money in your pocket as opposed to those in America.
No, I get what you're saying.
Work hard.
I get what you're saying, but I guess I don't quite understand why there's not a number attached to that. I mean, of course, most of the people that you're talking about in the bottom 35% don't pay federal income taxes at all. A very, very large percentage of people in our country don't pay federal income taxes. This won't impact them at all, and nor should it. This is about income tax. It's not about the people who don't pay here. But I guess I'm a little stunned that Democrats in general don't have a number that they're attaching. By nature of having more money, when you pay the same percentage as someone else, you're going to be paying more of your money anyway. When you look at these tax brackets, they're still progressive taxation. It's still a graduated tax bracket of 12%, 25%, and 35%. They're still paying more. How come that's not enough?
It's not that it's not enough, but I think that we should not get hung up on this monetary amount that you're looking for, saying, what is the number? There is no magic number, right? There is no magic number. If there is, I'm sure Democrats will have come out and said it and gave talking points around it. But it's just making sure that we are equitable in our practices, and there's nothing wrong with that. We see that in school systems. We see that in hospitals. They don't necessarily attach a monetary value to something. They just want to make sure that their practices are equitable and are fair to everyone, especially those in the lower populations. And that's all that we're saying here. So
no, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I guess what I'm trying to do sitting here is I'm trying to come to the table to your point of view and saying, okay, accepting that premise for a second, what is your problem then with this one? Because equitable would not be 35% tax for somebody and 0% tax for somebody. Equitable would be, a flat tax rate for everyone. So I'm coming to you and saying, well, what kind of tax reform would you support? What kind of tax reform are progressives proposing here that they would actually get on board with in order to achieve what you said at the beginning, a bipartisan tax reform bill?
Well, we can say this. We can say we would not want a tax reform or a tax cut, because this is not reform. Let's be very clear here. This is not reform. These are tax cuts that we're witnessing, that Donald Trump has put forth. We would not like tax cuts that, again, benefit those individuals who make more money. And I think that's very simple. I don't think that is one of those things that is innocuous in his terms, basically saying like, hey, who are the individuals who are going to be hurt most here? And that's all we're saying. To me, I think is actually very simple. If you are able to make more money, but then you keep more money in your pocket as opposed to people who have less money, then that is problematic. And that is all that we're saying.
Right. No, and we're running out of time here, so we can't quite keep going in circles. Yeah, sure. But I just wondered when you said if you're making more money and you therefore have the capacity to share more money, I mean, how much of that? Should they give away enough money so that they are equal to this bottom 35%? There's no number here, and I guess I wish Democrats would present a number that would satisfy them so that we could come to the table. Dr. Osefo, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate this conversation.